Okay. Well, good morning. I think we've probably got just about 30 minutes this morning to just run through some ideas and some notions and maybe some tactics and plans for looking for ways to recruit folks, potentially in places that you haven't already looked. And you this morning have myself and also Annette Batson. Say hello, Annette. Maybe Annette. Maybe Annette's on mute.
Yeah, are you okay? Now can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good morning, everyone.
So, and we're just going to spend a little time talking about recruiting, and there'll be a little back and forth. Feel free to chime in or ask questions if you like. It's a small group, so it can be quite conversational. And I think we just want to start with, we hear a lot from folks of, I want to hire a seller. I have this seller wish list. And I've heard things, and I know Annette has heard things like, I'm really looking for a super sales stud. I want somebody who's really great. I really want a bright hot shot or a go-getter. I'd love to get an experienced seller from another media. There's a couple of rabbit holes there that we'll touch on as we go forward. And then the other thing that I think I've heard a great deal is I really like to find someone who's really experienced so I don't have to worry about sales. And I can just put that in somebody else's hands so I can do what I'm really good at, and I can find somebody to take over this sales focus for me. And the tough reality is that finding a good seller is difficult. And then as an independent publisher, with what you all have, you also have some additional challenges. First, in finding great sellers, great professional sellers know their value. They know that they're really valuable as good sellers and that they're in demand. And so that super fabulous, experienced hotshot knows that they're worth a great deal of money to someone. So many really experienced and good sellers are unobtainable, particularly to independent publishers and small businesses for that matter, simply based on earning potential. And even really sharp entry-level candidates that are out of college, who've worked at their college newspapers or been involved in college media or worked on their college websites are being heavily recruited, even by traditional media, and being offered some great base salaries and full benefits and high commission earning potential. So I probably haven't told you anything here that you don't already know. Probably made a great job of stating the obvious, so to speak. What we want to do with you today is really talk through where and how to recruit, what some skills and traits are to potentially look for in folks that you're looking to hire, bring forward some life stage groups as candidate options that we've seen success with in other places, and then some strategies on selling them on you. So does that sound like a good plan? Sure.
Yes, everyone's.
Will there be time for questions, Eleanor, afterwards?
Absolutely. Okay, absolutely. So we thought a really good place to start with this was, I think everyone on the phone has heard of Barista.net, right? And we've all heard that there's been really good sales success at Barista.net, and there has indeed been some very, very good success at Barista.net. And the majority of that success is attributed to Annette. Annette's been with Barista.net for a while. And so we wanted Annette to just spend a couple of minutes talking about her background and how she came to Barista.net. I think that for those of you who aren't familiar with her, you will find that her pathway to sales is completely different than what you have mentioned on your wish list. So with that, I'm going to go to Annette.
Okay, great. Well, my story is a little different and a little untraditional. I studied anthropology. I got a master's in public health after working in the travel industry for about 10 years. I took a gap between my undergrad and graduate. My background, personal background, I was born from two first-generation Americans. My mother's a native Spanish speaker. My dad's a native French speaker. So I was raised in a multicultural, multilingual family, which enriched my vision of the world a lot. I have changed careers maybe 5 or 6 times, just as opportunities presented themselves. And that's kind of how I got into Baristanet. When I had my first child, Alex, who's now 22, I stopped working. And it wasn't 3 children later and 12 years later, we moved to Montclair, and the kids were all in school and old enough to free up some of my time. And my husband and I started thinking about me going back to work, and I was adamant about not, putting on a suit and commuting to New York City to do the businessman job I used to have. And he told me, my husband's a journalist, so he knew about Baristanet, and he said, oh, there's this great blog. Maybe they need some writers or some people to do investigative reporting or report on restaurants. And with my background in marketing, sales, and healthcare, I was always writing proposals and preparing presentations, so I knew how to write. And because of my background and personality in the travel industry, I've been very interested in finding out, about the history, current events of places, what's going on in the entertainment and food fields of wherever I live. And that kind of was a good mesh for me to become a local reporter. As I moved to Montclair, I was a new resident, and I wanted to find everything out about the town, even if I wasn't going to be a blogger. But it kind of was a great synergy. So I approached Liz George, who was one of the 2 owners, still is, and I basically said, here I am, I'm available, and I'd like to work for you. And she took a chance on me. I think it was just one of those one-off meetings. We were in the same place at the same time, and my husband said, oh, that's Liz George from Baristanet. Go talk to her. And I did. And she hired me to start reporting in the holiday season, taking pictures and meeting people. And one thing led to another. And after about 4 years, I was pretty much writing the whole page. And along with that, I was, of course, making huge contacts in the local community because I'm reporting and trying to find out what's going on. I was looking for stories. And everybody knew me. So at the same time, I would say, hey, Debbie and listen, why don't you, while you're along your journalistic reporting path, why don't you see if people want to advertise with us if you see an opportunity? And so I did. And one thing led to another, and I started bringing in a lot of revenue, making sales. And after 6 years of doing both, I said, that's enough. I'm either going to do one or the other. And since it seems that my talent for bringing in money was it was a scarcer resource than a writer in Montclair, I said, let me just go full time into revenue and selling ads. And that's how it all happened. Is that enough? Another slide? Hello?
Eleanor, are you gonna, you gotta hit the next slide.
Okay. So I just wanted to mention, I think there are a couple of really good takeaways there before we move forward to the next slide. And that is that first, Annette didn't have a traditional journalism background. So when she was out there, she didn't face all of those separation of church and state notions of, I'm talking to somebody about a restaurant opening, and I'm not sure that I should talk with them about advertising too. She didn't have those barriers that she had to cross. The second thing is that she really believed in what she was doing. So she had affinity for the brand, and she had affinity for what they were covering in the marketplace. So the evolution to sales came really naturally. So, which is a different path than saying, I want to get a hot shot seller, right? So, all right, Annette, I'll go to the next slide. Oops.
Yeah, it was kind of an organic process. I never thought of myself as a salesperson. But when you think about everything in life is a negotiation, and could be, whether you're trying to convince somebody to join your club or try a new restaurant or start a new career, you're kind of negotiating, and it's kind of a sales process, and you want to do something that is of benefit to you, and the person who's trying to convince you wants to make sure you understand it's a benefit. So like I said, I didn't have that, and Eleanor was right, I did not have that traditional journalistic background of separating, oh, you can't do this because you're doing that. Anyway, what I think has helped me being a seller is that I had a good business background. I had a good education. My first comment was be smarter than prospective client. You have to be, the salesperson, shouldn't think of it as sales. I don't like the word salesperson. It's like more of a facilitator or a business consultant. And when I go talk to clients, I try and go there with an idea of what can I offer them that they haven't thought of. That's what when I say be smarter than your prospective client. Do a little homework on the business, and with the knowledge, the salesperson should have some knowledge of the business and cultural environment, and take them information that's going to be helpful and be helpful in you closing a sale. Thinking outside the box, that involves when they put up their barriers and say, I can't afford it, you think of solutions. If they say, I don't know, I'm not sure, you think of different synergies. Why don't you, you could suggest that they partner with another business in town and do some joint marketing. Even if it's not something that is directly related to the sale, the salesperson should be helpful, full of information, and engage with the client on a personal level. If you speak the foreign language, and they do too, I always start speaking their native language. If you're both from the West Coast, I'm from the West Coast, then you find points of commonality. If you know about restaurant business, or you've been in, had different experiences in their kind of business, whether it be medical or entertainment, you bring some information and education on a personal level to the table, and that builds trust, and it makes them see you as something more than just a salesperson. That said, I always like to ask questions. A lot of people haven't thought about what their real business plan is, or what their top selling product is, or they might not know, what the least profitable part of their business is versus the most profitable. And I get that dialogue going to think, well, what do we need to do to make your business more successful? And then I wrap all that into an ad campaign. And that's like, those are the kind of things that when we're talking about going, about my unorthodox approach to sales and background, those are just things I brought with me, my knowledge of life and working in different jobs in different countries, and talking to people. A salesperson, when you interview them, they can't be afraid to talk. They have to be, chatty, but not to the point of just, saying nothing, but informative, direct, and clearly able to articulate their thoughts. The person should be a risk taker and not be afraid to approach people. They should be able to, with their knowledge of the community and their knowledge of the product, which is your blog, they should be able to just automatically think, what would be a good match, and go take the product, take an appointment and with a potential client and approach them with confidence. Be happy. This is not a job for shrinking violets or people that are kind of submissive. It's a bigger than life kind of job, and so those are the kind of traits I would look for. Okay, so this kind of summarizes what I've been saying. Your best representative, rather than a young gun who is totally motivated by money and wants a full-time career, this is, I think you want maybe a more mature, an older person, maybe in their mid-30s to mid-50s, who has the ability, to get on the phone and speak intelligently, and not schmooze intelligently, and not like the salesperson you typically get. You don't want people getting hanging up, and you want on the salesperson's calls. You want someone who knows the ins and out of your business. I had the luck that I started out as a reporter, writer with Baristanet, and that afforded me an intimate knowledge of the back end of the business, the front end of the business, the constraints we have in delivering stories. It also educated me about journalistic limitations, knowing what we can write and what we can't write, and when people ask us to do things. That all enhances the sales reps in understanding of the product, and allows them to better represent your product, your blog, to the community. And it makes for a better sale. So you know exactly how you can help a business, what you can do, you can offer. And you come to, the representative should bring value to the conversation, value to the meeting, and so they haven't, wasted their time. So to do this, you need someone who's a self-starter, very motivated, pays attention to details all along the way of, asking them when their busy season is, asking when their budget cycle starts and ends, so you can time when it's appropriate, if they say no the first time, to go back. These are just kind of intuitive things to me because I have a background in business. So that's the kind of stuff, that's why I think it's better to get someone who has some work experience beforehand. The most important part of the business is following up by phone, following up in person. If someone says, call me in 3 months, then you call them in 3 months. So you have to be organized to remember, how to do that. And always be polite and respectful. I err on the side of more formal when I'm communicating by writing, and I'm always quick to respond. And for 10 years I've been doing this, and people still say, wow, thanks for answering so quickly. It's a simple thing, but it creates the whole vibe of you're a serious business, we want to help, we're here, we're attentive to you and your needs.
Mm-hmm. Great. And I think, I just want to clarify, so we're not making a recommendation on hiring an age group. But Annette is saying there are some benefits of getting some folks who have actually been out in the workforce a bit, in terms of being out there and being involved in business. However, you can find a candidate who's got some of the great skills and some of the great qualities that Annette mentioned. And then, of course, you can set expectations throughout your job description and the hiring process of what they're going to have to do. Some things come really intuitive to folks who have been out there. But if you get someone who's early on in their career, you can, in either way, you should be able to spell out in a job description, for example, that the expectation is that they follow up within 24 hours of any contact, that one of the requirements of them working or selling is that they manage these details that are required. That your expectation is that they get to know the community if they don't already know it. a lot of those things you can lay out in expectations if they don't come equipped with those. Annette was new to Montclair when she, or well, I shouldn't say new, you'd been there a bit, but was relatively new to the market, wasn't born and raised in Montclair, so was learning upon the way, working with Barista Annette as well to become this great salesperson that she is today. So I think a couple of the groups, let's see if I can get this to work.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Somebody asked me about how I handle rejection or how someone should handle rejection. You know what? If you believe in your product and understand your product and know who is going to benefit and who won't, when you're rejected, you don't take it personally. If you've made a good match, I'm a one-man show here, so I can't go through the phone book and just randomly hit up people for advertising. I really just go to places I know who's going to benefit, food, entertainment, special events, services in town which are in demand because I know what the culture of this town is, like college consulting, tutoring, exercise. And if you think about it, if someone says no, ask them why, and it's usually some answer that I can accept, and I can say, well, if they say, well, it's not the right time, I don't have the budget, I say, you say, okay, well, when's a good time for me to follow up? When would you like to hear from me again? You always leave the door open. And yes, it can be discouraging, especially in the dog days of summer, no one wants to advertise. But then you think of other things, other ways to handle it. If someone says, I really can't do this, I say, well, how about if I give you a free month to try it out and you buy a month, because then you're saying you still want to get your name out there. You still want to test the waters, see what happens. Maybe that'll work, and try and figure out another way to make things happen. But some people are just not savvy enough for internet advertising yet. Some people don't have websites, and that's a completely that's a deal breaker in most points. And so knowing that when you go into it, you just have to, I would say the best way to avoid disappointment is to carefully select your prospective client list. Put together a really a good list of potential clients.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, and hopefully several folks on this call will also be attending the sales training that's going on at Montclair. I think that's in October. But those are really great points and things to look for in terms of reaction when you get potential candidates in and you're talking with them about working. Some candidate groups that I think are really important to consider when recruiting are this list here, and many of them are often looked over. Certainly moms, retired sellers, community college grads, and I've got a couple of bullet points on that, and grads living back at home in your town, living with their parents. So we'll cover that when we get to the slide, as well as service industry employees. And I think very often folks, I have had to recruit for sellers for the past 15 years. So I've looked under a lot of rocks, and I've had my wish list of things that I really hope to get, and then have also found really good places to look that aren't typical. The places that I have looked that have had really good success are certainly listed here. I'm sharing those. We're sharing those with you. So moms, I think many people sort of stay away from moms because in many cases, moms require some additional flexibility. Now, I don't mean to say that people job discriminate, but but they'll say, well, I can't have somebody who's part-time, or I don't want somebody who's doing part of the work, or et cetera. However, I think there are some really good things to understand about moms. So Annette, for example, had been out of the workforce for 10 years or 12 years? Yeah. And, many moms are really educated and experienced professionals, and they're making a life choice for their families to stay home. many who, in my experience, I have found are yearning to work and do something, but need flexible scheduling. There's a reason they're not wearing the corporate suit or doing the commute into the city. What you get with them are a group of people who are very invested in the community. They've got children there, so they're very invested. Moms also have a pretty hearty network that's in place, and they have a real pulse on what's happening, at least from the community level. For those folks who have children, they're very connected. They can bring all of that to you. In exchange, you give a little bit of flexibility, or you give a little bit of flexibility in work time or work hours, times of day, etc. But they can be a great benefit for you. There was a point, just as an aside, there was a point when I was running an operation in Knoxville, and we were running several startups. I had a network of moms that was about 30, who all worked as independent contractors and got piecework, but they were a great little network. And I used to say, listen, we've got to get this managed. Let's call the moms, right? We've got this project, or we've got this initiative that we need to manage. Let's get the moms. And they were great, and they loved it. They earned extra dollars. They were very diligent in the work that they did. They were excited to work on things together. They were a great group. But the first couple that I had, the first couple of moms that we brought on board, working flexible hours, doing some part-time work, were working out so well. And that's the reason we said, let's get more in the network and bring on more. So they can be a really rich group of folks for you. The next group, oh my goodness, I have such a sensitive mouth. The next group that I think is very often overlooked are retirees and retired sellers. And so if you think about this is a group of folks who have had good careers, who've made decisions to not continue on with their corporate jobs or whatever they've done. They've got, in many cases, very good business experience. If they're retirees who have also had some sales experience, even better. But many of them have been in professional roles. They have a really good work ethic generally. They most often, if they've retired in your community, have great ties to the community. You certainly can identify quickly whether or not they've got good reputations, but if they've been in the business world, they very often do. They're really responsible, great stewards of your brand in the community. They're often very loyal. Now, they can hit the ground running, and they can be very often quite self-sufficient because they've had adequate business experience. If, in many cases, if just armed with what the product is, what they have to sell, the ins and outs of how to manage the details of it, they'll often just go and run. I had a group of specialty publications and specialty websites, and for no intention of mine, this just seemed to be the group of folks that I ended up hiring for those products. And they were very focused and they were great, but they treated them like they owned them, which was a wonderful thing. They did work in the community. They were very in tune with where the money was. They were great stewards. They worked hard. I didn't have any of them on a salary. They didn't need a salary. But they sure liked getting those commission checks. So the point there is they can be great catches. And I think very often this group of folks gets overlooked because of what we talked about on slide 1, some of the common things that are on the wish list. I would encourage you to look into these places for great hires as well. And then the next group, I call the community college grads. So college grads who have been B students, I think are really good because the A students have great jobs and they're already recruited, but the B students have something to prove. And college grads who are living back at home have parents who've paid for an education who want them to do something. So this can be a good niche of that college grad group to go after. A couple of caveats here that I think you have to be prepared for. The first one is if you're hiring a college grad who's looking for a leg up, a way into the industry, or trying to get this job on their resume, you may have them for a year to 2 years. So I've talked with many folks who said, well, I don't want to hire them because they don't stick around. However, I would encourage you to also look at them. In my experience, I've said if I get them for a year, great. They're going to work like crazy. And if I have them for 2 years, I'm really lucky. But I've made great progress with them in that time period. So that is if they're hiring on and they're really just looking to try to get some experience. Now, there's a lot that you have to teach them because they don't have business experience, so they haven't been out there in the world. However, if you lay out expectations, they will follow them. They've just left classroom time and graduation. They've been following a syllabus. They'll follow a job description and a list of expectations. Now, it's interesting. The millennial group is a really interesting group, and they're motivated by a couple of things. There's a whole segment of them that are really motivated by doing well and doing good and doing well from doing good. There's also a group that's motivated by advancing quickly. They're a quite impatient generation. So today I want to be a seller, but in 6 months I want to know how to run the business. But they are quite agile in that they'll take risks for a possibility of ownership or some profit sharing benefit from their efforts. So those are things I would encourage you to look at. Not saying you should change your business structure, but if that's something that you envision, there could be an opportunity there. So if you're looking at this group, sell them on, as I said, a leg up, a way into the industry, a great job on their resume, or if you envision a larger business, sell them on future growth potential with you. And if you are hiring them, if you're a hyper-local community news site, or you have a very cause-related topical area of interest, you can get them to come on board, and they will justify coming on board to work with a company who's doing the greater good for less money. But you have to be incredibly clear about your mission. And if that's a local mission or if that's a cause mission, you have to be very, very clear on that. Now, if you are and you've got that, then you can very often get them to make that leap with you as well. The last group that I'll touch on is service industry employees. And this is another group of people that I have had great success with, and I think is very often overlooked. You can identify very quickly whether or not they've got great people skills. You can, all of the traits and the skills and qualities that Annette mentioned earlier in those few slides, you can identify very quickly whether or not you see those. You see them interacting with groups of people in that environment. They're also a group of people who are familiar with earnings that are predominantly tips, and so commission translates. This is also a group who will make some sacrifices and say, I've had several service industry employees who are making the transition and trying to build up a book of business on the sales side. So they would work with me 4 or 5 days through the week in the daytime, and then they kept their service jobs like Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday, some Sunday, depending upon whether they were food or liquor. But they did that while they transitioned, so they had an opportunity with some flexibility on their scheduling in that industry to accommodate also breaking into a new industry. And folks who are in the service industry often are like, they make great money on tips, but they get stuck in great money on tips, and it's difficult to transition into another role, particularly because entry-level roles only pay a portion of what they were earning. So sales is a nice transition if you get somebody who's got those great personality traits and some of the other traits that you're looking for, and if you're willing to have some flexibility with them and give them the ability to make that move as well. Any questions on that from anyone before I move on? Okay. I'm going to call that good, or just assume people can't find their unmute button.
Yeah.
So the next thing that I think we want to talk about is just about the title and how we approach sellers. And I know Annette and I are both going to speak to this a little bit, but many really great sellers who are out there who are working for small businesses have not identified themselves as sellers or thought that they were a seller. And because of that, have never would not be the person who would come forward and apply for a job as a seller. and particularly folks who have been who are those moms who are coming back into the working world, right? So they've been in professional careers. They've not thought about themselves as sales reps. So one of the things that I encourage is thinking about other titles. All of these titles that are listed here certainly have a primary role that's related to sales. Marketing is sales, and listen, we sell in everything that we do. But a lot of the things that we've listed here as part of titles are also other responsibilities or other things they'll be doing in the community anyway. I mean, your seller is your brand ambassador. They are your marketing specialist. They do community outreach. And so considering a job description and then that is not necessarily sales rep or sales executive may help you get the kind of person that you're hoping to get on board. Annette, what would you like to add there?
Yeah, I never think of myself as a salesperson. I have to wear a lot of hats. If you think about it, the person who is this ad salesperson is going to be your representative in the community. They don't see you because you're managing the back end or holding down the fort or writing your blogs all day long. And so the person who's out there is wearing the hat of your blog, your brand, representing your interests and seeking out how to match your interests with the interests of a potential advertiser. There's one word we didn't have on here, which is a collaborator, business collaborator. The person you hire should collaborate with you on your business and should collaborate with potential advertisers and go and recognize opportunities in the community, be it an event or an opening or art exhibition, recognizing that you can facilitate the brand of the potential advertiser by bringing your brand of the blog to them. And that's a synergy. It's a marketing synergy. And it's you're helping each other. It's kind of, again, it's another organic kind of thing that it'll make the sale work when you can point out what maybe they have a need that you haven't realized, or they don't know how to get the word out. They say, a lot of people come to me and say, I'm doing XYZ. How can I let people know about it? And that's what people want to hear. They want help, and so if you come, you hire someone with the idea that they're helping. They're like the community outreach that we have there, the consultant, the advisor, the facilitator. That's gonna add value to you, to your product, and make them a very credible, likable representative for your company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So you kind of have to think about it different, and I think I don't know if this is on a slide somewhere else, but we talked about, the people the owners, business owners who blog owners who want to just hire someone and forget about it. Just take the advertising and bring in the money. But it has to, but I think Eleanor and I both agree, you need to share and collaborate with your salesperson because it backs them up and gives them credibility, and they're not working in isolation, but you're working together. I think that's the magic of the business.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. There has to be a very good partnership. You can't just take it or set it and forget it, if only, right. But it just doesn't work. So I think we wanted then to just share a couple of tips around job posting. And how you might attract some of the folks that you're looking for. And so the first one we want to share is just selling them on your mission. And I pulled this from the folks at Riverhead Local. I pulled this off their website. And I pulled this purposely because, I don't think that you have to have some sort of incredibly polished looking, serious mission that's out there. I mean, particularly if you're in a community site, connecting with the community, being part of the community, being invested in the community, is what matters. And so I think this does an incredibly fabulous job, and fits very well for exactly what the folks in Riverhead are doing. But if you include these, if you include this information or include what you do as part of your job posting, really selling them on you. And if you bring a tool when you talk to people, and keep in mind, if you have somebody who's a good candidate, you have folks that you're trying to bring onto the business, you want them to be passionate about what they're doing, and you want them to understand why what you do is so important and what your unique selling proposition in the marketplace is. So you have to sell them a bit on you. And I think, that there are some pieces in here, and we'll share this deck, of course, but, the folks in Riverhead have said, we live in Riverhead. We love our town. We want it to prosper and progress so that our children and their children can call Riverhead home for generations to come. And, they've also said, we care about quality of life here and the quality of education offered and opportunities for commerce and the protection of our environment. And, they're really invested in their community. They share that for anybody who cares about their town, moms, retirees, service industry workers, but as well as those college grads who are really looking to be invested in a cause or tied to something that's doing good work. The economy of your local town and keeping local working is a great thing to sell them on.
Right.
The other thing that I think is important is to sell them by telling them who they're going to work with. And this is actually, I pulled this off a job posting from a company called Help Scout. And so of course you see that some of these titles are a bit larger, but if you're trying to get folks to come on board, if you have a retired professional, they want to know that they're working with other professionals, and so that there are other folks in the business that they feel they can collaborate with, that they're going to have a good experience with. If you're hiring a millennial, they want to know that if they're coming to work with you, that they're working with folks. They may not be making a great deal of money out of the gate, but there are folks there who've got great experience and folks that they can learn from and that they can progress from working with. If you're hiring, somebody who's changing in industries, they want to work with folks that they feel like have good knowledge that can help them break into this industry and help them learn about that industry faster. For any one of those groups, if you have a mom who's a professional who stopped working to stay at home with kids, that mom wants to know the kind of people that she's going to be working with, even if it is part-time or flexible hours or whatever. So this helps you get, by putting this information out there and by sharing this information, by selling candidates on you, helps you get better candidates. And the last job posting tip that I think we'll share is sell them on your vision. So you've got you've got where your business is today, but many of you have a vision for where that business is going to be, how you envision it growing, scaling, getting larger, having great impact. Share that. This example is from a company called Pop Experts, and this is from their job description. So they do their About Pop Expert, and they lead with our mission is, and then some of the growth opportunities and the vision of the company. They talk about, we've got these experts that are in place today, but we've got support from others, and here's where we're going. And so if you're hiring any of those groups that we talked about, or anyone, if you're looking for good candidates, you're going to attract better candidates or better referrals for candidates if you're giving them a bit more information about you and selling them more on what you're doing than just expecting them to come forward for a sales job, right? I think the last job posting tip that we want to share is, actually post that you're hiring. So Annette and I were chatting yesterday, and we both had this moment of folks who shared with both of us that they really want to hire someone, and they've talked about hiring someone, and we've said, well, okay, so if you're having a difficult time, where have you posted it? Where have you tried to hire folks from? And the answer has been nowhere. And both of us have said, well, have you posted it on your site? Have you posted, I said, hey, we're growing. We are looking for marketing specialists in the community. Join us. Annette shared, even a headline that says, do you love us? Do you enjoy reading BaristaNet? We'd love to talk with you about a position or a role. But for both of us, many of us, we found that the majority of the time that hiring a salesperson was a bit more of a notion, and less something that there had actually been a posting about. So our advice is post it on your site, post it on Craigslist if you want to, but for heaven's sakes, post it. And certainly consider offering, part-time flexibility or flexible hours or independent contractor capabilities or job sharing if you're able to hire and you can get 2 people for the same hours as one. And Annette brought forward that, even things like some of the benefits of working with you can be really good. Free shows, meals, tickets, some of those extra perks and benefits that they might not get working some other place in town.
Invitation to press events that they might not get to, premiere showings, things like that, which come up. And I think that for someone starting out in this job, it's probably going to be a part-time job, and it's going to be, if you're starting out, it's going to take a lot of lead time to get traction, to get things going, and it would probably be best to get 2 or 3 people who are working part-time, because everyone's going to have a different schedule and they're going to have a different set of contacts and different connections in the community. And it should be a job which they find fun and interesting, and not tedious. It's a job where you don't have a commuting cost. You don't have to buy special clothes. You don't have to punch a clock. There are a lot of really good benefits that come with this job. You get a lot of freedom. You can work from home. You can work off of your cell phone at any location. So it's just, I like that part about it. I don't. Nobody at BaristaNet works in an office. We all work from our homes. We're all local residents. We all know the community, and we bring different strength and knowledge to the pot.
Mm-hmm. So with that, let me just open it up for questions. Well, hello.
Hi. I'm sorry I was on another phone call, but I wanted to say hi. It was really good hearing Annette's voice.
Hi, Debbie.
Explaining the barista.
Hey, Debbie.
I didn't know you were here.
Well, I was just here for the last 10 minutes, so I was on another phone call, but just wanted to make sure that everybody on the phone call who is, called in to find out more about our boot camp if they have any questions about what it's going to be like, that they have a few minutes to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. Your timing's impeccable.
So unmute yourselves if you have a question.
Let's go ahead and go through here.
Hey, Eleanor.
Yes.
Tell me, will this track be different than the CJET track you did a couple years ago?
The track that we're doing at Sales Academy?
Right.
Yes. Yeah, I think the track that I did at CJET a couple of years ago is I'll call it sort of a pretty broad-based track. I think the first couple of days we're going to dig into some specific areas. I think one of the things that we have worked on to make this track ideally more beneficial for you is the ongoing coaching that happens throughout the course of the 8 weeks that follow. So we've designed the program so that we are following through each phase or step of the sales process. And each week there are components of the sales process that we'll train on, and then we'll garner real life feedback from. So call it real life learning experiences from each of you. Try to overcome or manage through tactics on how to manage that in field in real life, then train on a new component and go forward. At the end of that period, each attendee who has been part of the program should have a nice pipeline of sales or a nice pipeline of prospects in progress that should turn into sales, and have had the opportunity to come back and say, hey, I tried this. This is what happened, or this is the result. And, it didn't work, or this really worked well, or what could I do better?
Do you recommend bringing a salesperson with you if you have one?
Oh, I absolutely think that if you have a salesperson, the ideal state would be to come to the session at Montclair State, include both the publisher and the sales rep, and then carry that forward for the next 8 weeks of training. And I think there are a couple of reasons for that. I mean, as Annette mentioned, it's difficult to be in a position where, let me not say it's difficult. If you're in a position where you're a publisher and you are hiring a seller, or you have a seller, there has to be a collaborative relationship that happens there. And then even as much as you may trust that person, as fabulous as they may be, you also want to have enough understanding of what they're doing and what they're facing so that you can coach to it. Or at worst case, be able to call BS on BS. So going through that together and having a set understanding of what the sales process is, some of the tactics and some of the actions that it requires for success, and then being through that process with that salesperson along the way, I think will benefit you tenfold if you have the ability to do that.
And you mentioned during your talk a few minutes ago in some situation where you actually had multiple salespeople, and I'm just wondering, that could be a possibility here, I suppose. How would you manage having, say, 2 or 3 people in your community without having them step on each other's toes?
So there are all different ways that you can assign or give them areas. So one way is to just let them do whatever it is that they do, but use a CRM. Now there's an expense associated with that. So the other thing that you can do is you can assign them categories of business that they specialize in. So for example, I've had a team I had folks who were responsible for healthcare, another group who were responsible for entertainment and dining, another group that was responsible for real estate, finance, and legal, the categories. So I broke the industries that were prevalent in the market into categories. I've also split them up by geography. So you handle your responsibility is everything that's west of Maine, and you handle everything that's east of Maine. And I've even split the phone book. If a business name begins with A through, H, it's yours. And if it's, I through M, it's yours, etc. So there are lots of different ways you can structure that.
Other questions?
I actually have a question. I wonder, you mentioned earlier about, when you get rejected, and I've heard that you should, it's wise to ask why, in a way, not like, well, why not? You say like, well, I understand, for my own personal benefit or for future reference, but when it comes to something like that, how do you avoid, or how do you deal with the I feel bad asking questions that I hate getting asked by I essentially telemarketers when I get called. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that urge to kind of not want to intrude? Do you just kind of power through and get over the awkwardness, or is there something that you tell yourself, or is there a specific way to ask the questions?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well,
yes, and yes.
Well, first of all, you're not a telemarketer. Telemarketers do random phone calls to random people who they don't even know.
Okay.
You're going into this, the first thing I said is pick your prospective clients wisely. Don't go randomly. Look at your community. What are they? Montclair, they have restaurants, so you go to restaurant. Montclair loves music, so you go to music festivals and music producers. You don't go to the window washing company in the neighboring town who's never heard of your blog, who's not connected in some way. You have to establish a good, a valuable prospect list. And then you won't be in that situation. But say you are, say the person's just not cooperative, and, if they want to get rid of you and don't want to talk to you, well, say, end the conversation. Say, well, I'm sorry for taking your time. I really thought this would be beneficial. Let me know if I can ever help you again. But I've never had that happen in 10 years, to be honest with you. If they categorically reject you, I said, well, why wouldn't you consider this? I know you advertise in the Montclair Times, or I know you've advertised in the New Jersey Life and Leisure, and you get a lot of information that helps you as a salesperson. Like I know car dealers won't advertise with us because they like the big vanity ads, you know? The people there are magazine vanity advertisers and there are savvy blog advertisers. And once you understand that, you don't take it personally, but it's an education process, and they're eventually going to find out yes or no. Does blog advertising and online advertising work better than press? You know, maybe for some people, print advertising does work better because they want to have the big glossy vanity ad with a car, and you know, the distribution, which is wider, and so it's really good information to hone how you select your how you spend your time chasing clients. Did I answer your question?
Absolutely, that's perfect.
Okay.
And with that,
I think too, one of the things that, oh, sorry.
All right, I say if anybody has any other questions, I think we have to wrap up. That's our hour. We're going to be repeating this exact same session tomorrow. So if you know anybody who couldn't make it, let them know that they can still join in and have their questions answered. Otherwise, this is being recorded and we will distribute it once we finish processing it. Any final words, Eleanor or Annette?
Yeah, one final thing is we talked a lot about finding someone who's invested in the community, and I also think realistically, since this is a growing business, don't expect to hire someone who's going to take this on as a full-time, looking for a full-time salary. This should be like a part-time salary and not the major source of income. If they're in a relationship, maybe the other person has the major salary. You know, my husband has all the benefits. We don't, you know, do healthcare benefits at Barista, and it should be the kind of job where it's a supplemental income. So there's not the stress and pressure and the defeat that someone might feel if they were under the gun and they had to make, you know, X $1,000s a month.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
And I'll do just a couple of final words if I
sure.
can.
Go ahead, Eleanor.
So just a couple of things on the Sales Academy. So Joe asked a great question about what if folks say no, or you know, what do you do to handle those rejections? And so one of the things that we will cover pretty in-depthly if that's a word, one of the things that we'll cover in great depth at the Sales Academy training is an approach to ask questions in a way that enable you to get answers and to make your sales process more efficient. So the statistics say that it takes 8 to 12 calls for the average sale. So that's across all business lines. And the process that we're going to go through and learn and talk a great deal about through the Sales Academy is a process that helps that sale or that closure to sale become a great deal more efficient and help you face less of those no's, or I don't want to talk with you, or questions like the ones that you just don't want to answer, you know, that you alluded to, the person who's getting hit with a sale who just doesn't want to be. So there's my commercial for the Sales Academy.
Perfect. Okay, that's a great one. I look forward to it. I'm glad I'm part of this. I hope I get in.
I think you know somebody.
I do. I know a few people. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for coming.
So much,
Okay, bye everybody. Good luck.
Bye.
See you later.
See you tomorrow, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.